Good morning, dear students. Please let's get to the second lecture in this series, of course, Coastal Ecosystem MSM 853. And we want to talk about deltas, okay? Deltas and their formation. Please don't expect so much slides. I'm just going to speak on this outline. All right. So the first one is we want to define delta. What actually are deltas? What actually are deltas? So we define delta as a landform. Please note, landform. Delta is not a water body. Delta is a landform comprised of sediments found at the mouth of the river. It can only form when river channels carry sediments into another body of water. Of course, it has to be another larger body of water. So when river channel carry sediment, going towards another larger body of water, whether it's a lake or a bigger river or the sea, that is when delta is formed. Now, Herodotus, a Greek historian, first used the term delta for the river Nile in Egypt. Okay, this is because this segment or the land segment mass developed at mouth of this river Nile has a shape of a triangle. And it looks like the uppercase of Greek letter delta. Greek letter delta is triangular. The uppercase of Greek word delta is triangular. Okay, and that is how Herodotus, a Greek historian, named it delta, stemming from the very first one that he saw, that landform, that land deposition that is found at the mouth of River Nile in Egypt. So basically, delta are depositional environments. So we're going to see how it works. So, but then we have seen how it got the name. The uppercase of the Greek letter delta. That is what Herodotus used to name it, because that delta from River Nile had the shape of a triangle. Okay, so delta are wetland that form as river empties their water and sediment into another body of water, such as the ocean, lake, or another bigger river. I've said that earlier. Okay. Now, please listen, although very uncommon, deltas can also empty into land, but we don't want to talk about that. We are not even finished talking about the one that empty into another body of water, but in very uncommon situation, you can find it on land. Okay. So how does it form? Now, when a river moves slowly as it enters its mouth or end. Okay. Now, this called sediment, that is solid materials that are carried downstream by current to fall as the river flows. Okay, so when it gets to a larger body of water, the velocity starts to slow down. And in slowing down, sediments will start to drop. Okay, and as they drop, they form what we call delta. As they drop, and continue dropping, that's this accumulation that will eventually form a land mass that will shoot out of the water, forming a delta. Okay. Now, but there's something I want us to understand here. Actually, we say that deltas are basically depositional environments. And things can deposit naturally and faster when the velocity of flow of the water reduces. Now, if the water is fast flowing, remember that rivers and streams they flow. Oceans and lagoons they do not flow. Rivers and streams they have horizontal movement flow, but oceans and lagoon they do vertical movement as a result of tide. There's no tide in river, there's no tide in ocean, but they flow. So if the river is flowing very fast, uh well, certain things can be dropped, but not much and not fine materials. We are going to see that later. But we want to establish here that it is only when the velocity of flow reduces that things begin to drop. Now, when it's almost zero, because you see a larger standing body of water staying on its own, then this river is moving fast, and then it meets it. When it meets it, it cannot run through it. What happens that it will have to slow down, and then as it's slowing down, things will begin to drop very fast. And most things that drop at this point are fine particles like silt, like clay. They are the most things that drop at this point. And that is why deltas are very rich uh, environment, because these fine material they contain a lot of nutrients. We are going to see that later. Okay. So when this heat keep dropping, they form a landmass that is called a delta. So basically, delta is not a water body. Delta is a land mass. Okay. So let's get to delta formation. Although I have mentioned how a bit of how it's being formed, and I've also mentioned how it got the name. Now, we have said that delta come from the ancient Greek word, okay, named by Herodotus, okay, using the Nile River, okay, that had the shape of, that had its delta had in the shape of a triangle. Now, how are deltas formed? There are two types of actions that will lead to the formation of delta. The first one is erosion, the second one is deposition. Now, if rivers are flowing, definitely along the way, they will erode materials. Okay? They will carry sediment, they will carry particles. But when the velocity slows down and getting almost to zero, they will start depositing. So the erosion and deposition are two major actions that lead to the formation of delta. Now, delta landforms are created by both actions. Okay, alluvial sediments, that is sediment coming from the river, is called alluvial. Alluvial sediments are eroded upstream and carried to the stream's mouth or river mouth, where they are deposited. Good. Now, water velocity is slowed near a river's mouth when it enters a level plain, especially in a larger river or a larger body of water. The slow velocity causes sediment to settle and create sediment bed. Okay. Now, this sediment bed, when it becomes excessive or when it accumulates one upon another over a period, and when the rate of deposition is higher than the rate of erosion, then a delta is formed. Please note, delta can only be formed when the rate of deposition is higher than the rate of erosion. If the rate of erosion is higher than the rate of deposition, no landmass will be formed to shoot out of the water. Okay. Now, When the rate of deposition is higher, it keeps depositing, and at a point, a delta is eventually created. Unlike other landforms affected by water current, delta is mainly created by erosion of land surface caused by the force of wind and water. Okay, we mentioned that basically erosion and deposition. And deposition rate has to be higher than the erosion rate for delta to be formed. At the end of this lecture, I'm going to give us a very brief uh, few minutes video that will further illustrate how delta are being formed. Now, where are deltas located? We have said earlier they are located at river mouths. So anywhere you see delta, then you must have a lot of rivers, a lot of streams, channeling towards a larger body of water like an ocean. That's typically what happens in the Niger Delta. If you are drawing the map of Nigeria, at the Niger Delta, you draw some networks at the base here. Those are tributaries. Now, what it means is that uh, people will call the Niger Delta now. Oh, those areas were actually water body, but as the rivers are trying to oh, deposit sediment into the Atlantic, the velocity slows and things keep dropping and dropping, and all of a sudden land shoots out of water and becomes a landmass where people now go and settle and live. That's how we got the Niger Delta. That's how we got any form of delta. So they are formed at river mouths. Okay, they are formed at river mouths. They usually exist at the mouth of a river entering an ocean. However, delta can be formed where river meets also a lake. It can even be where river meets another larger river. Okay. Alright, so delta can be found in the mouth of the river that carry large amount of sediments. Okay. So basically, where are they formed? Where are they located? At the mouth of river. Why? Because sediment had to be carried from that river and then entering the larger body of water. Velocity gets slowed down, things keep dropping, and then landform forms. As long as the rate of deposition is higher than the rate of erosion, landform is formed, and then that is what we call delta. Okay, these sub-areal landforms, that's what we call delta. Now, what are the factors affecting the formation of delta? What are the factors affecting the formation of delta? There are some factors. The first one has to do with the width, the depth of the river, the width of the river, and the velocity of flow of the river. I repeat, the depth of the river. Now, if the river is very deep, even when sediments are dropping, remember it is only when the sediment has dropped and accumulated and then become sub-area, become area, that is, become emerged, not submerged, become emerged, and then shooting out of water. That is when a delta can be formed. So if the river is very deep, things will keep dropping, accumulating, but as long as it does not shoot out of water, then there is no delta. So the depth of the river is a very key factor in the formation of the delta. Another one is also the width of the river. So just like the depth, the width is also there. So if it is very wide, what it means that as the sediments are being dropped, they kept spreading, and then they will not they keep moving horizontal wise, so they won't be coming up vertical wise as to form a landmass. So another one that is also very important is the velocity of the flow. Now, if the river flows very fast, the tendency that things will not be dropped until when it gets to where the velocity reduces drastically before material, especially the silt, the clay, the mud, before they could start to be before they could start dropping. Okay, so these are the major, and I hope we'll be able to explain it. The major three factors that affect the formation of delta. Now, what are the types of delta? There are three basic types of delta. There are the arcuate delta, there are the base foot delta, and then the cuspate delta. The arcuate delta, let's pick the first one, the arcuate delta. The arcuate delta are the fan-shaped delta. They are shaped in form of a fan. Please, you are at liberty to research more and, if possible, get the shape in form of a drawing or in form of a figure to help your understanding. It is shaped in form of a fan. The hand fan, the normal hand fan that we use, from like a form of a leaf, but a broader leaf, a hand fan. That's why. Now, the wider portion of the fan is facing the water. Relatively coarse sediments are formed at this type of delta. Okay, coarse sediment, because you have the larger with the wider portion of the land facing the water. Most importantly, the shape is like that of the hand fan. Now, this fan shaped with the wide portion of the fan furthest from the channel, from the mainland, crossed by many short, well-defined distributaries. This type of delta are composed of relatively coarse sediment. We have said that. And then wave and river activity are fairly well balanced. So there's a balance between the river activity and the wave from the sea. Okay. The Nile Delta is an example of an arcuate delta. The Nile Delta is an example of an arcuate delta, shaped with the wider part facing the river, and then the wider part facing the water, and then the narrower part facing the land. The second one is the bird's foot. Just as the name implies, it is shaped like the foot of a bird. Our own Niger Delta is the typical example of the bird's foot delta. Okay, they goes in them because it forms like the foot claws of a bird. Okay. This is created because there's the wave from the sea is weak, while the flow from the river is strong. Remember, we said that in arcuate delta there's a balance between the river current and the wave action. Okay, that's a balance in that of arcuate delta. But in the foot, on the best foot type of delta, he said that the action of the wave and the action of the river current are not balanced. Okay. Now, where the action of the wave is weak and that of the river is strong, an irregular shape delta forms that extends out into the water well beyond the local shore. Okay, so it's either way. It's either the wave action is stronger than the river current or the river current is stronger than the wave. Either way, either way. Unlike the aquate one that is balanced. And the third type is, okay, let's give an example of this boss that told us that our own Niger Delta is a typical example. And then the the Mississippi Delta, in the Gulf of Mexico is another type of Bosphorus Delta. Okay, while the River Nile Delta or the Nile Delta is an example of the coast of the aquate one. Now the third type of delta is the cuspate delta. They are found where sediments are deposited into a straight shoreline with strong wave. They are formed where sediments are deposited onto a straight shoreline with strong wave. The wave pushes the sediment to spread outward, creating the tooth-like shape. So the cuspate is shaped like that of a tooth, creating a tooth-like shape. Cuspate delta formed where a river drops sediments onto straight shoreline with strong wave that hits head-on. Okay. Example of it is found in the Tiber Delta in Italy. The Tiber Delta in Italy. They have very few distributaries. Okay, there are very few distributaries. The wave action and the sediment spread outward in both directions to form from the river mouth, making a pointed tooth. Okay, making a pointed tooth shape with size that curves inward. So accurate shaped in like that of a hand fan, bird foot shaped with that of the foot claws of a bird, and then a cuspate shaped with that of a tooth. Okay, accurate you have example at that of the Nile River. Bird foot you have example in that of our own Niger Delta, and then the Mississippi Delta, and then the cuspate you have the Tiber, Tiber, Tiber Delta in Italy. Okay, so what are the importance of delta? In fact, we shouldn't be told. Here in Nigeria, we have our budget depending on crude. Okay. Unfortunately, they say that the good that laid the golden egg in Nigeria is neglected. But having said that, delta are areas that are host to many resources that both people and animal rely on. In our own case, the crude oil comes from the Niger Delta. The crude oil comes from the Niger. That's why they created the NDDC, trying to see how they could use, part of this to help people in those regions. Unfortunately, NDDC is a milk cow for a lot of politicians. So delta, even though they do not cover much on the actual land area, of course they don't, but they are host to many resources that human beings rely on, that animals also rely on. So river delta area hosts millions of people. Of course, where the carcass is, there the vulture will gather. So where you have a lot of resources, people tend to gravitate to such areas. River delta, they provide food, they provide ports because they are always having boundary with the ocean. So they provide ports, for transportation, for trade, and so on and so forth. Now, also they are the most biologically productive place in the world. They are the most biologically productive place in the world. Why is it so? Remember when we are talking about the deposition, we said that most time what got deposited are debris, debris, silt, clay, with high amount of mineral content. These things are biologically productive. These things will lead to biological productivity both on land and in the surrounding water mass. Okay. So ecosystems like wetland, mangrove forests depend on a stable river delta. Animals like birds, insects, sometimes even live predators rely on the ecosystem of delta. So you can get more information on the importance, both ecological and economical importance of delta. Now let's talk about the anthropogenic impact on delta. Just as in the last lecture, we say that coastal areas, of course, delta are coastal areas. I hope you know that. Now they attract a lot of people. People come for greener pastures, people come for tourism, commerce, and so on. So, and with that, it also has its own attendant impact, pressures from humans. So, changes in the environment and climate can alter the delta. We modify, human beings seem to love to modify, and that is why even when nature has blessed us with certain things, we want to modify. In the colonial area, the GRAs, even the universities, like those premier universities, if you enter inside them, it's like you are entering inside the forest. You have a lot of trees. The environment is cozy. No air pollution because the large amount of trees are busy mopping up the CO2 and even some of the dangerous gases that are mopping them up. So, but human being will always come, and I don't know why they love cutting trees. Even here in Ilag, when I was an undergraduate, we had more trees than we have now. But many of them are being cut off. I don't know for why. Well, I don't know. Some people might know better. So human beings like to modify things. They like to change their environment, even when it is going to be, to their own detriment. When channels are dug into rivers or wetlands are developed, you know, people even develop artificial wetland. In Malaysia, that this wetland that was artificial, you know, people created a wetland. Because the importance of it. People created wetlands. People create river channels. And these things are impacting on the delta. Okay, and when this happens, when you create channels, for example, when you create channels, you dredge, channels. What will happen is that the amount of erosion will increase. The amount of erosion, this means that more sediment will wash out to the sea faster, faster. They wash out to the sea faster rather than slowly filling in the delta land. So when you dredge, you're causing the velocity of flow to be faster. Now increase, and remember that if erosion is faster than deposition, then delta will not fall. All right. So increased sea level and strong hurricane also threaten the sensitive nature of deltas. Okay. So in general, human beings impact the delta in so many ways: creating of dams, channelization, sediment bypass, a lot of things, dredging, a lot of things. All these things will impact negatively on the delta. Please get more information on this. Now let's get to restoring deltas. How do we restore delta? It might not be an easy job anyway, but we have to try. Restoring data takes considerable amount of time and energy. Of course, money is needed. Of course, time is also needed. The political will is also needed because a lot of things are involved. Even with coastal restoration attempts, data around the world may not be able to withstand such rapid change and population growth. Because once there are population growth, uh, definitely the environment will be impacted, and data cannot be left out. Okay. So scientists are, however, working hard to find ways to protect rivers and channels while keeping their environment or their population sustainable. Okay, so that what you call sustainable development. Nobody said, remember I said earlier, I think in the last lecture, that exploration is very good. Exploitation is very good. What is bad is over exploitation. So development is very good, but it has to be done in a sustainable manner. So that's why we have what they call sustainable development. Now, you don't develop to the detriment of the ecosystem because if the environment is impacted negatively, it's going to bounce back. All we have is our environment, all we have is our surroundings. So, if it's not in good shape, it will bounce back to us. So, all we need to do, even the ecologists, they advocate for sustainable development. There will be development, but let it be done in a sustainable manner. Okay, so delta and sediment transport. I am going to, uh, and the next slide is going to be something that will help us to understand. Remember, we said that there won't be delta if there is no erosion, transport, and deposition. Okay, there should be transport of the sediment and then the sediment finally deposited. Okay, now how are sediments being transported? Sediments are particles, okay, and they have various shapes. Okay, um, they are the larger ones, they are the mid ones, and then they are the fine ones. Now, depending on the size and weight of each of these, that depends on also how it could be transported. Now, if you or like me now that weigh like 70 something, I don't have much weight anyway. At least I weigh less than 80. Now, if there is a stampede or if there's an issue and I am with you in a place, maybe we are having a physical class and you are weighing 120, and then there's a stampede and I needed to carry somebody. I will look at somebody that is weighing like 60 to carry, because if I carry you that is weighing like 120, both of us will fall. So that's what happens during transportation. If the sediment is very heavy, the water will not be able to carry it in the water column. So the best it could do is to roll it on the floor. Okay. Now, if it is a middle size like sand, it can take it in the water column. But after some time, it will drop it. When it becomes heavy, it drops it. Or when the flow becomes lower, it drops it. So it will form a parabola. Okay. It will move up like an N, a small letter N, and then it drops. Not probably small letter, but from a parabola. Now, but if it is very fine or like silt, like clay, it will be suspended inside the water and it can move forever until the water has stopped, virtually stopped flowing. Then it starts to sediment, it starts to follow. So, and in either way, there must be deposition. In either way, there must be deposition. And this deposition has to be higher than the rate of erosion. for a delta to be formed. So there are three types of transport. That's the first one is the suspended load. Suspended load are for fine-grained sediment, typically clay and silt, transported in suspension due to turbulence. Okay, there's also saltation. Saltation are typically sand transported by intermittent jumps. Okay, transitional state between bed load and suspended load. Then you have the bed load. The bed load are the coasal sediment, larger sediment like gravel, transported on the floor of the stream by rolling or sliding along the water floor, the floor of the water body. Okay, because the water couldn't carry it up into its column. What it does is to roll it along. Okay, so that's why it's called the bed load. All right. This gives some form of illustration of what we just said now. Okay, but there's a bit of change here because where you have the solution, the suspension, and the bed load. Okay, solution is not included in what I said now because when you talk of solution, you're not even talking of sediment, you are talking of or chemical compounds, okay, that could dissolve, okay, that could dissolve and form solution. So there's no sediment there. So this one starts from suspension. The suspension here is what we also have as the suspension load, okay, where you have the tiny rock, the clay, the seed, the fine sand, and all the rest. Okay, and then you have the bed load. Well, you might need to get more information so that you not get but here there's a mix up here. It says saltation bed load. Bed load is different from saltation. Bed load is different from saltation because saltation has to do basically with sand, while bed load has to do with pebbles, boulders, and gravel. And then suspension has to do with the clay and the fine and the silt. Okay, but the lower drawing is what gives some a bit of more illustration. So just look at it. The bed load is still the bed load. You see the larger particle side sediment that are being rolled along the floor. Then you have the suspension here. It's supposed to be saltation where you have sand, and then the solution here is supposed to be the suspension where you have the seal. But with this drawing, what they are saying here is that this is not actually talking about sediment as it will, because solution, the salt, the calcium, the magnesium that are dissolved, you cannot say that they are sediment. Okay, so you might actually use this for better understanding. The suspended load has to be with the salt, the silt, the clay. Silt and clay are collectively called mud. Okay, and they are always ever in the water column until velocity is almost zero, then they begin to drop. Saltation is for sand. So they're also suspended, but at a point they drop after forming a parabola. The bed load are never suspended in the water column. They are rolled along. They are rolled along the. They are rolled along the water. The floor of the. They are rolled along the floor of the water body because they are not suspended in the water column. These are three major forms of transport, and in each of them, there must be deposition, and the deposition has to be in such a way that it will accumulate and form landmass. So longer the rate of deposition is higher than the rate of erosion, with time a delta is formed. Thank you for listening and God bless you.